What's going on, everyone? So the upcoming Scream 7 is supposed to be very Sidney-focused, Sidney-centric. Sam and Tara, their departure, basically kind of required Sidney Prescott to return. Now, they could have went hey, here's a new group, here's a new cast, here's new everything, but it's very risky, right? Especially for a franchise in which they just got the rights a couple, years ago. Wasn't that long ago. Talked about this dating back to Scream 5, that hey, when Spyglass and all them, when they purchased the rights to Scream, I mean, it wasn't just Scream, it was an entire catalog of films and shows and stuff, but still, Scream was the big grand prize in that they were probably going to pump out a ton of movies, right? So they might not even be broken even yet. So we're probably going to get several more films, and that's why there's a lot of talk about this potentially being the beginning of a new trilogy, where you'll essentially have 7 through 9, which I'm all for, right? I've talked about it. You can make Scream forever. Keep going. And I love it. As long as it's a good film and it's not just like a blatant cash grab, because, I mean, all films, period, or, people always talk about, oh, it's a cash grab. Well, yeah, I mean, every movie is designed to make money, and I'm okay for that. But it's one thing when a film is clearly like, this was just made for financial gain, and then there's the side where it's like, okay, no, this was a very good movie, right? As long as they're good films, telling good stories, developing good characters, go on forever. The beauty of Scream is that it's always someone different. It's not a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael where it's just like, if they die, that's it, right? Now you got to restart all over, create new timelines and all that stuff. No, it's always someone different under the mask. You can have the next wave. Once Sidney fades out, boom, you have the next wave, right? And so that's very exciting. But if they're going to do and kind of set up the future of the franchise with this, which makes sense, why you bring Sidney back, you bring Sid back, right? Because, again, Sam and Tara, they departed, Melissa and Jenna Ortega, and so kind of in this position where it's like it's really risky to just introduce all new characters, and now everyone's kind of like, ugh. Even when they introduced, Sam and Tara and everybody in Scream 5, they still had Gail and Dewey and Sidney, right? And they had, recognizable characters that people would kind of flock to the theaters to see. Also, they didn't do a good job with Sam, right? Which is their own doing and the writing of it. So much so that people couldn't stand Sam. More people kind of came around in Scream 6, but Scream 5 did Melissa Barrera no justice. And so I'm sure that there's even more kind of risk factor and concern because of that, you kind of go the route with Sidney Prescott. Okay, fine, cool. Sounds great. And then I think you take a new group of characters and you start building and developing those characters in order to kind of lay the foundation and framework for beyond Sidney Prescott. Or if at any point during this new installment, you can pivot away if need be, right? Say, Neve Campbell's just like, I don't want to do it anymore. Or, she gets another opportunity elsewhere or whatever, right? Like, there's a million things that can happen to where, you could be in a bit of a rock and a hard place, right? Like, if Neve didn't come back, what do you do, right? Like, because I don't think that they would have not made films. I think that they would have. But now you're going into that risk factor. So luckily you were able to entice Neve to come back, paid her what she was worth, which, hey, never going to be mad at somebody getting the bag. I do think it's kind of funny. It's just like, man, it was just a misunderstanding. It's all good, right? We're buddies now. It's okay. Like, it was no big deal. It was just like a little moment, right? Like, it's always funny, how money changed things. But no, look, again, get your bag. I ain't mad at her. Right? She's getting paid, but, how long can Sidney Prescott, Neve Campbell continue to do these films? Right? How long would she necessarily want to continue to do these films? Right? So, to me, at some point, if you want to continue to create these Ghostface stories and developing characters, you need to start laying the foundation for characters that people kind of buy into, that people kind of believe in, people kind of enjoy beyond Sidney Prescott. Right? You need to have that next wave, right? And that's kind of what they wanted to do in Scream 4, was create, Kirby and Jill, and there was talks about, Kirby surviving and, her and Jill, like, going off and riding in the sunset and all that, right? Like, They have tried to do this. Saw again, Scream 5, introducing Sam, introducing Tara, right? And Chad, Mindy, right? Like, kind of creating this network of characters in which you could continue to tell the story. The other side of things that you could potentially do is you kind of keep it a family dynamic, right? So Scream 7 is supposed to be, again, centered around Sidney Prescott, but it's also be centered around her family. It's supposed to be centered around her children, and Mark Kincaid and all that, which I think is very interesting, and I'm actually very excited for in that regard. However, you can, and I've talked about this before in previous videos and made a video about it, you can luckily, because of the timeline, right, you have from Scream 3 on, which basically gives you from year 2000 to now, or the time that this film releases, so you're basically now in a position to where you can essentially make her children whatever age you want. You can't really do that with the one in the stroller, but, you know, where she says, oh, my girls, we don't know how old they are, right? You know, some people take that as like, oh, there's twins or this, that, and the other. Like, no, I mean, we don't know necessarily what the age group is, what the idea in which they're going to do that. Are they twins? Are they not twins, right? Like, the only thing we know is that she has girls, right? She says, I got to take my girls, get a run in before I take my girls to school, right? So you can, I mean, the kid can be as old as 24. You know, the girls could be 24 and 22 or 23 or whatever, right? Like, they could also be 17 and 16. Like, you can essentially make their age whatever you want to kind of fit your story and narrative. So to me, you could kind of use that as like the jumping off point where, you know, you have Sidney. This film is set up for Sidney. You develop Sidney's daughter, have her kind of the age of Sidney Prescott around the time, you know, Sidney was first introduced to Ghostface, right, back in 96. So you could have kind of like the new young Sidney, who is Sidney's daughter, and kind of create this, obviously you got to develop and tell a convincing story, but kind of use Sidney and her family as the setup point for future installments in which you can have Sidney's daughter kind of continue to take the reins, but you could still have Nev and Sidney in the films going forward, just maybe in a lesser role, right? And, you know, maybe, you know, if you ever end up not getting Nev back in one of these films, you could kind of do something where, you know, Sidney, like, her daughter is, you know, we'll just say Mary, right? Just using a name so it's easier rather than having to keep explaining. So let's say Mary, right? She's away, college, whatever, and she gets attacked by Ghostface. You know, you could always just say, like, oh, I don't want to get my mom involved. She's been through enough, whatever. Like, let's deal with this ourselves type thing, you know, and kind of go that route if you needed to explain it. The only thing about having Sidney's child kind of be the focus front and center is you're essentially handcuff yourself to Sidney, right? Because if you're going to have her daughter and her daughter is going to get attacked by Ghostface, then you know Sidney Prescott is going to want to come and protect and save her daughter. Same thing with Mark Kincaid, same with all that. So you could run the risk of things getting a little kind of, I guess, you kind of, again, handcuff yourself to Sidney Prescott. Kind of put yourself in a position where you're kind of stuck having her in every film, or coming up with a reasonable explanation as to why she's not in it, or you'd have to kill her at some point, right? To where, you know, now you don't need that explanation. Now, would they actually do that? I don't think so. I think fans would be pretty upset and bothered, but, you know, historically speaking, we talked about this before, historically speaking, you know, almost every horror franchise has killed their final girl at some point. That has had, you know, several sequels and stuff. So, I don't know. I think that that's very interesting and could make for an interesting dynamic to kind of have her kids. I think you need to establish the new sort of Sam, you know, Sam and Tara. Not saying that they have to be sisters or anything like that, but just as in the characters that at any moment you could, if you need be, can just pivot into those characters and tell new stories with those characters. Because you also don't want to every Scream, it's like Sidney Prescott, and then you have like 10 new characters, right? At some point, you need some familiarity, you need some character development, some character growth, you need things that make sense from all standpoints, so to speak. So to me, I just think at some point, you're going to need to have that influx and injection of new characters. And I think one way to kind of go about that and approach that would be to kind of introduce other characters beyond Sidney Prescott and her family, and then, or either that or build on Sidney's children, right? So you build on Sidney's daughter or 2 daughters or whatever, right? Maybe you have the new Sam and Tara is Sidney's 2 daughters, and they're the sisters that are going off and doing their thing, right? So anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you think, like, yes, they gotta have something. You got to establish some new characters. Would you think it's cool if, like, Sidney's daughters were kind of the new Sam and Tara? Do you think no? How do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So if you enjoy these types of videos, I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.